Wuthering Heights. We have got to talk about this. While I believe that many adaptations can be enjoyed for any number of reasons, I am confused as to why the 2026 Wuthering Heights movie exists in name. And I do mean that, in name. Quotation marks and all. Adaptations and retellings are different by their very nature. Adaptations are more of a reshaping of a story. Adaptations and retellings are used kind of interchangeably. This is a mistake. It's kind of a forgivable one, but a lot of people like to interchange them. Adaptations are a taking of a source material and into another medium, kind of change little to nothing. Retellings, however, are different. They retain most of the plot points, but with extreme focus on certain things, diminishing on others, and a changing of motivations. Kind of like the fish was actually this big, the boat was actually this small, and we went fishing for this reason, not this reason. The Wuthering Heights film by Emily Fennell is none of those. This is not to say that previous adaptations did much better. I mean, to be fair, to undertake this vast, sprawling, multi-generational narrative is a crazy undertaking. This book is so important. This book is about the dangers of societal dehumanization of foreigners, of people that you think are different than you. And it is also a cautionary tale of obsessive possession masquerading as love. And Emily Fennell, if you want to make an adaptation or a retelling, if you want to make a movie, I'm whatever. But if you take a source material and you amputate its second half, you boil all of its characters down to a mediocre, brooding 2 when they need to be in an 11, and then you decide to pervert and destroy every single theme and philosophy of that novel, then you are a hack standing on the shoulder of a giant just to make a buck. And I think you're a piece of shit. Emily Fennell even kind of seems to be laughing at us, because on the official poster, Wuthering Heights is in quotations. What more can this mean other than I know that this is nothing like the novel, but this is kind of the way that I wish that it had gone. I know that this is water, but I'd like to call it whiskey. But honestly, in good fun, I do kind of imagine that this is how Heathcliff would have dreamt that he and Catherine's relationship actually took place. If Heathcliff from the novel, in his dreams of what he and Catherine's relationship was, the Wuthering Heights movie of 2026 is probably it. But much like Heathcliff being named after the dead son of the Earnshaws that he replaced, Emily Fennell's film has no love for whence it is named and means to destroy everything that's attached to it. Needless to say, there's a massive amount of topics that can be covered about this book, and I'm going to be summarizing to an embarrassing degree. But it is to illustrate 2 points. Abuse is not sexy, and how we create our own monsters. The film romanticizes abusive relationships, and it squanders its opportunity for the social commentary on racial dehumanization. The novel is not the greatest love story that was ever told, as the film is being marketed. It is a cautionary tale. And to understand that, we have to understand Heathcliff. He's a monster of the worst kind, and he's not the Byronic hero that some claim him to be. Heathcliff is very much seen by some scholars, some literary scholars, as the most terrifying villain in literature. And it is because he is a monster, and one of the worst kinds, the one that we make. And we make him not with bolts of lightning, just with good old-fashioned abuse. Okay, Heathcliff, and how a monster is made. Like I mentioned before, Heathcliff, after he's brought home found by the father of the Earnshaws, he is given the name of the dead son. You imagine that? just being like a walking gravestone with no identity, a reminder of what he never was and never will be. Now, I will say that generally I do not care what skin tone is cast for what role, unless it is a crucial component to the psychological development and damage of that character. And in this case, it is. It is not clear in the book exactly whether he is of Romani, Indian, African, mixed race, but he is a dark skin-toned boy, described by Emily Brontë as dark-skinned gypsy in aspect. The role of him being treated as the other plays a crucial role in the psychological development and mutilation of Heathcliff. I mean, he is oftentimes not even referred to by his own name. He's referred to as it, or it gets so bad he's referred to as imp of Satan. Catherine is not the sweetest girl to him either when he arrives. I mean, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves me, she spits on him because her dad didn't bring her home a toy and brought her home this foreign child instead. Nevertheless, throughout their adolescence, a bond is formed, and it becomes the foundation for a debilitating obsession that will consume him entirely. But such did drowning grasp for anything that might save them, and he becomes dangerous. Mr. Earnshaw, the father, is actually quite kind to him, but he creates a different kind of monster because he prefers Heathcliff over his own son Hindley. This only fuels Hindley's absolute abuse of Heathcliff after his father's death. Heathcliff is repeatedly and continuously thrashed by Hindley, beaten regularly and often, and denied education. He is reduced to servitude and beaten by other members of authority, going to sleep every night in agonizing pain. These are conditions under which a monster is made. The other crucial ingredient is across the moors, large stretches of grassy goodness from Wuthering Heights, in Thrushcross Grange, the Lintons move in. There's a mother and a blah, 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 but the two important characters are Edgar and Isabella, brother and sister. When introduced, Catherine is adored, and Heathcliff is treated as subhuman, as garbage. Imp of Satan, imp of Satan. This isn't just children being mean. This is a methodical husking away of his humanity. I mean, it reminds me of when I got my pit bull, and everyone warned me about how dangerous she would be. Leilu, I named her Leilu. Leilu is actually the French word for chosen one, which is what they fashioned Lilu off of for the Fifth Element. Little trivia. But everyone warned me that she was going to be so dangerous, but she was raised with love, and she was sweet, and she was wonderful. But what happens when you beat and torture a dog their entire puppyhood? Yeah, exactly. So he was abused physically, he was denied education, and he underwent psychological torment. The fact is that Heathcliff quite literally unsettled them. He exposed them by simply existing. In his body, his skin tone, his foreign tongue, they saw the immigrant. They saw the poverty they wanted so terribly to ignore. The illegitimacy that threatened hierarchies. And even the distant stain of slave labor that fed cities like Liverpool. He stood in their doorways as living evidence of the unseen hands that provided their comfort and what their societies tried not to name. And bravo to Brontë, because she really makes us feel for him. But the intention here is not for us to validate or justify his later behavior. It is for us to understand how he is made. Some other things do happen. Hindley has a son, Hareton, who will play a very crucial role later. So the stage is set. We have years of abuse and one inseparable friendship. And then the moment the psychosis scale tips. Catherine is fixing to get hitched to Edgar Linton, And in her confusion, she states, "It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now, so he will never know that I love him." Now, Heathcliff only hears the first half, and so he splits. But such is the fragility of his mind after being brutalized his whole life. And this singular misunderstanding will result in a destructive, perverted desolation that engulfs 2 generations. Okay, so he splits, he returns. 3 years later, he is groomed, grown, and loaded with greenbacks. Very, very rich man. Where did his money come from? We don't know. My guess is sketchy nonsense, but the mystery is where he derives his power. When he was a child, he's tormented for his otherness. He now uses mystery as a weapon. We must be clear, though, he does not return for Catherine. He returns for himself. Obsession is never about the other person. It is a gauze in a bullet wound. His childhood wounds will never heal, but this is because he places his entire value on another person, Catherine. I'm going to try to map concisely Heathcliff's path of destruction and resist the urge to summarize the entire novel. Heathcliff ruins Hindley, which good, because fuck Hindley. But he preys on him, forces him into further alcoholism, forces him into further gambling, further debt. He establishes mortgages on Wuthering Heights, and when Hindley dies, takes control of it and his son Hareton, which then becomes Heathcliff's plaything. He marries Isabella, Edgar's sister, out of spite and revenge for Catherine and Edgar's marriage. He abuses her mentally, he abuses her physically. One of his first atrocities against her is the hanging of her dog, and states that he wishes that he could hang everything belonging to her. She is so tormented at one point, she believes she has married the devil himself, and she flees to London, gives birth to their son, Linton. She falls ill and passes when Linton is around 10, I believe. And then Heathcliff takes forced custody of Linton, and Linton becomes Heathcliff's plaything. Catherine proceeds to deteriorate mentally, physically, everything. All from the strain of Heathcliff's torments and possession, obsession, everything. She dies shortly after giving birth to her and Edgar's daughter, Cathy. Edgar dies at some point, so let's just not talk about him. But so Cathy becomes, you guessed it, Heathcliff's plaything. Over a large expanse of time, Heathcliff sets to work on the next generation to recreate the pain that he went through as a child. Heathcliff denies Hareton education and cultivates his brutish nature, trying to turn him into a perverted form of what Hindley believed that Heathcliff was when Heathcliff was young. He forcibly takes Linton, as I stated, after Isabella's death, but only to be used as a tool of revenge. Linton is a frail, sickly boy, and Heathcliff hates him. He detests him. He terrorizes him. He kidnaps Cathy, the daughter of Catherine, and he keeps her prisoner until she concedes to marry Linton, a part of Heathcliff's plan of psychological torture. Shortly after the marriage, though, Linton dies of frailty and the terrorizations that have been beset upon him by Heathcliff. But before Linton is dead, he had attempted to pit Hareton and Linton against each other to recreate the hatred that Edgar and Heathcliff had when they were children. He threatens Cathy with murder like it's his job, physically abusing her while disgustingly stating that she reminds him so much of her mother, Catherine, and can't even make physical eye contact with her when he abuses her, stating that the blue eyes haunt him with his dead love. Oh, and I got one for you. do I got one for you.
Our lover boy.
When he finds spare time in between the constant torment of his playthings, the children, he goes and he unearths Catherine's grave. Now, to give him some credit, he said that he had resisted the initial urge when she was first buried. Good for you, Heathcliff. But then decides to do it long after. We're talking years. So the worms that have a good run on her, and he just lays there with her and stares at her. Now, some people have stated that there's like necrophilia that takes place, but there's no evidence on the page. Don't let anyone convince you of that. And isn't he enough of a monster already? In the end, Heathcliff is not defeated by anyone. Good does not triumph. No one overpowers him. No one brings him to justice. He remains legally and physically in control of everyone and all properties until he dies. The only reason he dies? He eventually gets bored. His revenge loses steam. He states at some point that he lost the faculties of the enjoyment of their destruction. And I'm referring to Cathy and Hareton, the only two last ones alive. He stops eating, he fixates on Catherine, he isolates himself in her room all by himself. And then one night he opens the window and lets all the elements in. And he is found the next day with an almost ecstatic expression, a huge grin on his face, covered in water, just dripping, soaking wet. That is a lot. That is a lot. I'm sorry. Okay, lighter note. Before he passes, Cathy and Hareton do break the cycle of hate. Cathy decides to help Hareton, teaches him to read, restoring the education that was withheld and taken from him by Heathcliff, answers the abuse with dignity and love. Hareton softens and accepts Cathy, and he becomes a higher version of himself. While Heathcliff's relationships are built on possession and control, Hareton and Cathy, their relationship is built on companionship and mutual respect. And through their love, Heathcliff's revenge architecture is finally destroyed and defeated. Both estates come together by marriage. Marriage that includes choice, love. So, was Heathcliff really in love? No, dude, no. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't at all love. Let's talk about Crazy Boy's reaction to Catherine's death for a second. He rushes outside after she dies, beats his head into a tree until he bleeds, and he states, "I pray one prayer, Catherine Earnshaw, that you may never rest as long as I am living. You say I murdered you, then haunt me then. They say the murdered do haunt their murderers. May you never rest?" Bro, that's not love. That's obsession. This is a warped desire so desperate that he demands to merge with the object of his obsession. You know, it's funny because Emerald Fennell really dropped the ball with this, because she explores this kind of obsession in her movie Saltburn, with the grave and the drinking of the bathwater, the want to just like become, to consume the other person. Not out of love, out of just warped reality. He wants to own them. He wants to be obliterated by them and to obliterate them. That is not love. That is not love, and that is not sexy. Love should always include the other person's peace. And that is the last thing that he wants. To not want your loved ones rest after they pass? He gravely misunderstands what love is. I mean, he desecrates her grave. Need I say more? All right. Lessons. What did we learn? Brontë, to me, had very clear messaging. She labored to aggressively demonstrate how we create monsters through societal dehumanization and racial abuse. We force innocence into the role of the other through denial of education, beatings, enforced servitude. Mix all that together and what you have is the abused becoming the abuser. Brontë depicts Heathcliff in bestial terms in order to reflect cultural anxieties. If we want to, and we try hard enough, we can make our own fears come true. We can make them into flesh. We must be better to our neighbors. We must see ourselves in others, regardless of race, skin tone, class, finances. I don't care. Fennell, with her film, had the opportunity to show true systematic dehumanization and the fallout from that. She had a large voice. She has a megaphone. She had a megaphone of a film that she could have addressed these things with, to talk about the fact one day the beaten will have the rod. But the real lesson, someone eventually needs to drop the fucking rod. This was an opportunity to show that violence begets violence, that abuse begets abuse, unless stopped with peace, love, and understanding, companionship, and mutual respect. These lessons are learned through Hareton and Kathy, the second generation. And on the subject of love, obsession and possession is not love. Ownership is not partnership. Contrary to the recent film, in the novel, Catherine and Heathcliff never consummate anything. It's all a fantasy. Sadly, no sexy time. The only thing that existed there was a fantasy. There are hints at attraction, but he wants something more primal. Pain. In his own words, he wants nothing more than to be disturbed by her for eternity. Raised on pain and chaos, he thirsts for it. And we've all been in relationships where someone with a troubled childhood, maybe ourselves as well, we try to recreate that same chaos and trauma in our childhood with our partner. We abuse and are abused until there's a breaking point, and then we extend a morsel of kindness, and then we forget that they were the person that was hurting us in the first place. The oddest thing about this filmic perversion of this beautiful novel, of this quote-unquote Wuthering Heights, is that Fennell seemed to have all the ingredients to make it. With her film Promising Young Woman, she had a creature of revenge with clear and solid motivations. And in Saltburn, she had a family destroyer that had kind of weak motivations. Why not just mix them together? Instead, she created an erotic fantasy. And I'll say it again, it really does seem like this would be the movie that Heathcliff would have written. This is what he dreamt of when he dreamt of his dead Catherine, that they did consummate, that they were in love, and they weren't. They never were. Heathcliff is one of the worst villains in all of literature. The scariest, the most terrifying, one of our own making. These are facts, and I am not making a ranking statement. Just look at the writing. He inflicts sustained, multi-targeted, multi-generational cruelty through domestic terror, speculative rape, child abuse, child degradation, coercive confinement, homicidal threats, terrorization of his own sick child, and to top it all off, corpse violation. Fennell made this man a heartthrob. Shame on her. You know, I remember when 50 Shades of Grey had first come out. And it was the erotic sensation that was sweeping the nation. And I remember I was in the makeup and medicine department of Target. I'll just never forget this. And I saw that they had these little makeup kits that they were selling to market for the film for children. And each one of them came with a pair of toy plastic fuzzy handcuffs. Yeah, it's fucking still makes me sick. This was for children. In an era of 50 Shades of Grey and You, and Netflix's You, there's a strong marriage of love and possession and obsession in our society. Does obsessive possession mean passion? No. Does chaos mean love? No. I had someone in my life that had claimed at one point that I did not love them because I would not fight with them. But the requirement for physical or verbal abuse does not equal love. This movie adorned the same name as a novel with massive gravitas, a novel of immense importance, and it disrespects it so shamefully, and it does it shamelessly. I respect creative exploration, but I do not respect this Wuthering Heights. Fuck Emerald Fennell's different take. The novel spoke against the very things that this film romanticizes. And in my opinion, if you wanted to make a film about eroticism, glorification of pain and ownership, and subpar brooding, then go make that movie. Go make that movie and make up your own title. But to stand on the shoulders of a giant to get your erotica made is just lazy fucking cash grabbing bullshit. This was an opportunity to speak on a societal abuse and possessive obsession, the dangers of it. Opportunities to depict those horrors made flesh through the character of Heathcliff. Opportunities to use that art to show how those cycles can be broken with understanding and admiration between lovers. This was an opportunity that was squandered on exploitative slop, in my opinion. But the costumes were sick. But the book, you know, what about the book? What about the book? I remember the first time I read Emily Brontë's Wuthering Heights, and I walked away from that book understanding a little more about the dangers of dehumanization, a little bit more of the dangers about obsession, but mostly acceptance and companionship. About how acceptance, companionship, and mutual respect really do have the resilience, maybe not to overpower hate, but to outlast it. Because hate and revenge and everything in between, they come from a singular source. They burn themselves out. They are rooted only in the obsessor. It eats itself alive like Heathcliff did. But it is not self-sustaining. It needs a victim's pain. And so, in the novel, the cycle is stopped when Harrington and Kathy choose to respect each other and love blossoms naturally. We can break the cycle. Kindness wins because it is shared. It originates from two souls that hold hands and maintain hope. The novel is a cautionary tale, but it is also a message of how we have the power to be better, to treat those that are different from us not as the other, but as a friend that we can share with. And love is neither possession nor obsession. It is mutual love and companionship. But, I mean, you know, I still maintain that you can like what you like. Like whatever you like. Truly, I mean, like, truly. Like, everyone is entitled to their hot takes. I mean, I like Lion King better than Hamlet. I like Fight Club, the movie, better than the book. Don't kill me. And I hate Scarface. But yeah, read this book and love each other. And fuck the movie.